Hey, it's Crystal Macy, Director of Play 5 Science for Gwinnett County Public Schools. Today we're going to talk about high yield science strategies. So what are the teacher moves that you can make in your classroom to make the biggest impact on your student achievement? So we're going to start off by talking about deconstructing the learning target with the phenomenon. We know that we show our students a phenomenon because we want them to engage in those real world problems. We want them to get super excited about what they're seeing and super excited about what they're about to learn in science. And when we take our learning target and deconstruct it with our students, we are finding that students are able to ask those better questions because they have a better understanding of what they're about to learn. So here we have an AKS for fifth grade. The AKS has developed simple interactive models to collect data that illustrates how changes in surface features are or were caused by constructive and or destructive processes. So our I can statement is I can develop a model to collect data that illustrates how surface features are caused by constructive and or destructive processes. So in my classroom, I would talk to my kids about what does it mean to develop a model? What are we going to do when we develop a model? What does our model have to do? It has to collect that data. It's collecting data to show what? How surface features are caused by constructive or destructive processes. So deconstructing that AKS and that learning target with my students, and then showing them the phenomenon. So this phenomenon is actually an augmented reality sandbox where we see students manipulating the sand and different things happening to the sand to show the different surface features. So as students are watching this phenomenon and I engage in the Notice and Wonder protocol or the question formulation technique, when my deconstructed AKS is beside it, students are going to say, oh, I noticed that they made a model because the I can statement is right there, right? And so they know they're about to develop a model that collects the data. So they might notice that we are looking at a model. They might notice different surface features. They might notice constructive processes or destructive processes. They might notice that destructive is going to be in the blue, and the darker the blue, the more destructive, and the constructive is going to be red. Again, with the darker red being the most constructive, and the yellow and orange being the least constructive. So they are going to take that academic vocabulary and what they're learning and embed it into their phenomenon and the questions that they're asking. So that's a great way to, number one, help with what they're learning. And that's really that explicit instruction. We're telling them, okay, guys, we are going to develop a model to collect data to illustrate surface features of constructive and destructive processes and showing them the phenomenon they're able to make that natural connection. So here are some examples that we have seen in different classrooms. So here we have the I can statement with our science, engineering practice cards. Here we see that they have asked their questions, they have their priority questions, and then of course their I can statement. Also notice that these are on the board, so the kids can go back to it, right? When we put our I can statement on a slide deck, the kids don't have that constant access. So using chart paper, using our whiteboards is a great way to get those I can statements in front of our kids. Another great strategy is the academic vocabulary word catcher strategy. So here we see some academic vocabulary. I love this one on the right hand because you can see where the kids have actually added that academic vocabulary. So what are the words for starting with deconstructing our AKS? What are those words that we can catch? And then as we are continuing to learn about the vocabulary, we can add in those different words. These are great to pair with our science vocabulary cards. So you might add above our word catchers, those academic vocabulary cards, remember they're in Spanish and English, to support the words that our students have caught. Really co-constructing the meaning with our students. Here we see the vocabulary cards with an anchor chart. And these are just great ways to engage our students. We see our notice and wonders, but they've added in the vocabulary with their anchor charts to really engage with the students. And again, it's not on slide deck, it's on chart paper, so kids have that constant access to it. If you are wondering, what words should my kids be catching? I want to make sure that you know about our learning targets and vocabulary buttons. So on every grade level page, when you go to the home page, which is the first page that pops up, you scroll down, you're going to see our curriculum calendars, our science and engineering practices, our ML strategies, and then our learning targets and vocabulary. So if I were in a classroom and I were the teacher, I would have those vocabulary words maybe on a clipboard beside me. And then as my kids are asking questions and catching those words, leading them to the words that I need them to know. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we're supporting each and every student in our classroom. And so a great way to do that is to utilize our ML resources. So on our ML resource page, you are going to find science and engineering practice slide decks broken into grade bands. You're going to see sample small group lesson plans that are aligned to our READA standards. And so how can we, using our READA standards, pull those small groups to support our ML learners? You also have our science high frequency words. Now remember, those are not going to be the academic vocabulary that our kids are going to get in the lessons. Those are those general words that our students need to know just about science. So here you see an example of the fifth grade vocabulary bookmark, and it has words like investigation and evidence and solution and science, okay? So here we also see the example of the science and engineering practice and alpha strategy slide deck for K2, and then the small group lesson plans for second grade. So these are all great resources to support the learning of each and every student in your class. Also, as a reminder, our launch lessons are a great place if your students are struggling with those science and engineering practices. So on our science and engineering practice page, that is where you're going to find our launch lessons, our graphic organizers, and our anchor charts. So I'm going to click this and show you what it looks like. So say I am teaching my students, we just looked at a fifth grade AKS around developing simple interactive models. So I've shown the phenomenon. My kids are struggling with developing models. So I have the sample graphics organizer that's going to help my students engage in developing models. I have my anchor chart that's going to help me explain to my students how they can develop and use models. I have additional resources that you're going to see in this next box. So this is around identifying components and relationships if you have to do that with their models. What does developing a model look like when I am developing and using models? This is a performance assessment for your students. We also have our launch lessons, and which is going to be like that direct instruction around the specific science and engineering process, and the slide deck that goes along with it. So if my kids are struggling with developing a model, I can teach that explicit instruction on how to develop and use models by teaching them the science and engineering practices, and then, of course, digging into developing and using models. Okay, so it has engage, it has question formulation technique, it has the graphic organizers, examples for our students, what that needs to look like, the sentence stems for our students, and then examples of how to develop models. Okay. So, as a reminder, the science and engineering practice resources are good. Also, as you are engaging with each and every student, we have graphic organizers that are used to support DLI instruction, but these are also great for our ML students who are learning English. So we have our graphic organizers in French, Spanish, and on some of our lesson plans, we'll also speak Korean, which we're super excited about. As you are engaging with your students around collaborative conversation, don't forget that we have these sentence stems that are going to engage the students if they are, we'll go back to developing a model. These are some sentence stems that they can use to help support that academic language and also that science and engineering practice. Here is an example of our train, evaluate, and communicate. information. What does that look like when I'm obtaining, evaluating, and communicating? It also gives an example. So really, these are a great resource, a high-yield strategy to support the science learning that each and every student needs. And then last but not least, our formative assessments and small group instruction. So as a reminder, when we're thinking about phenomenon-driven instruction, there are three big buckets. We have our phenomenon, where we're getting kids to notice and wonder and ask those questions. We have our econ tasks. Those are those literacy mini tasks, those things that our entire class is doing. But then we also have the formative assessment and small group instruction. So if you did not know, our formative assessments are broken into 4 questions: a beginning, a developing, a proficient, and a distinguished. When you give your kids this formative assessment, you are going to be able to figure out which kids are at beginning, which kids are developing, which kids are proficient, which kids are distinguished. A lot of our teachers say that they take a piece of paper and they fold it in 4, and then they have 4 boxes, and they write all of the students under question 1, and those are their beginning kids. All of the kids that missed question 2, those are the kids that are developing, proficient, and distinguished. Then to align with that, we have our small group lesson plans. So if kiddos miss question number 1, which is which of the following surface features is pictured in the phenomenon above, if they miss that, then you know that you're going to pull, and you are going to pull the small group lesson plans, and it's going to get that direct instruction to support the learning at the beginning and development level. So here we have our teaching point, we have picture cards and vocabulary cards to help support our students. A lot of our teachers, actually didn't go back a slide. You can see that in these pictures, the kids actually brought their formative assessment to small groups. So not only did the teacher utilize the small group lesson plans, but she went back and had kids understand what they missed on the formative assessment to support that learning at the AKS at the high level. Okay. So question number 2 is going to be that developing task. And so here we see question number 2. It is written at the developing level. If a student misses that, then I have my lesson plans that are my developing lesson plans to support those kids to get them at the proficient level. We know that if students miss the proficient level task, they are struggling with the science and engineering practice. So they might have the content, but not the science and engineering practice yet. So in our proficient level lesson plans, you are going to see that we are really leaning into the science and engineering practice that is aligned to the proficiency level of the kid. And then at the distinguished level, that is where you're going to see a lot of our test prep. When we think about the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade DAs and 6th grade milestones, most of those questions are written at the distinguished level. And you might not have any kids that do the formative assessment and are at the distinguished level yet. So these are great to pull with your entire class, or if you do have a group that needs that based on the formative assessment data. But these are great to get your kids to that distinguished level where they're refining what they're learning. As always, thank you so much for your time. We are here to support you, and thanks for watching.